Well, today we are looking at Philippians chapter 4, verses 10 through 13. And last week we went over contentment and what contentment is. But we didn't go into much detail on how to be content. It's one thing to know if you're content, but it's another thing to learn how and know how to live in complete contentment. And so we'll look at the Apostle Paul to see how he accomplished it and how we can accomplish it. There's a story told about a Russian woman who lived with her husband and 2 children in a small house. Her husband's parents lost their house, and so they had to move in with them. And of course, she thought it was unbearable. In desperation, she went to the village wise men, who she knew had solved many difficult problems. And she begged the man, she said, "What should I do?" And the wise men said, "Do you have a cow?" And she said, "Yes." And the wise men said, "Well, then bring the cow into the house with you, your husband, 2 kids, and your husband's parents. And then come back and see me in a week." A week later, she comes back and she tells the wise men that was completely unbearable. And so the wise men asked her, he asked her, "Do you have any chickens?" And she said, "Yes." He said, "What about the chickens?" And the wise men said, "Well, bring the chickens into the house along with the cow also, and come back and see me in a week." And she said to the wise men, You're nuts, you're out of your mind." But nevertheless, because the wise men had such a good reputation, she did as he told her. A week later, she comes back to the wise men and she says, it's completely impossible. Our house is a mess." And so the wise men said, "All right, well, take out the chickens and come back and see me in another week." So she takes out the chickens, comes back to see him another week, and she says, "Well, it's a little bit better." And the wise men said, "Well, now take out the cow. That will settle your problem." And it did, because without the chickens and without the cow, her husband's parents, and the 2 kids got along just fine. Everything is relative. Sometimes we just don't know how well off we really are. Paul writes this in Philippians chapter 4, verses 10 through 13. He says, "I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that once again you renewed your care for me. You were, in fact, concerned about me, but lacked the opportunity to show it. I don't say this out of need, for I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am. I know both how to have a little, and I know how to have a lot. In any and all circumstance, I have learned the secret of being content, whether well-fed or hungry, whether in abundance or in need. I am able to do all things through him who strengthens me." So contentment is then not found in possessions or circumstances. And we have, along with what Paul says, we have this promise that God has given to us in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5. Don't love money. Be satisfied with what you have. For God has said, I will never fail you. I will never abandon you. And so in verse 10, Paul is talking from a heart full of thankfulness for the financial support he has received from the church at Philippi. I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that once again you renewed your care for me. You were, in fact, concerned about me, but lacked the opportunity to show it. See, the Philippian church had helped Paul when he was in prison. And when you were in prison, it wasn't like the prisons of today. You didn't get the free medical care and the free eyeglasses and the 3 meals a day and all of that. If you got anything at all, from blankets to food to other things, you got that from somebody on the outside watching out for you. And if they didn't watch out for you or provide money to buy those things, then you were out of luck. And so Paul, while he's in prison, the Philippians sent him some money so he could get the necessities of things that he needed while he was in prison. And so this morning we are going to look at Paul's secret of contentment for living our lives. See, Paul tells us that he has learned the true secret to a contented life, and he wants to share it with us. See, the first thing that he tells us is contentment is a learned state or a learned thing. Contentment is not something that comes naturally. Paul said he had to learn to be content. In the same way, we have to learn how to be content. In verse 11, he says, I don't say this out of need, for I've learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am. For I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am. Like the story I told you about the lady with the chickens and the cow and the parrots. She learned how to be content, though she was much more content without the chickens or the cow, for obvious reasons. But at least she had her own alarm clock inside the house. You know, every morning when the sun came up, the rooster would crow, and I'm sure everybody was wide awake because the cow mooed and the chickens cackled, and it was probably quite the mess. So contentment is something that is learned. Now hear me on this. This is something that we all can learn. And it's something that we should be living our life by. Now, am I always content? No. And if I ask you, are you always content? I'm sure the answer would be no. We're not always content because living life is difficult. And sometimes we look at the wrong things and we get discontented. Paul's contentment was not quick or instant. It was the fruit or the journey of walking with Jesus faithfully, learning from experience that he could trust the Lord to provide what he needed. See, part of our problem is we don't understand what contentment is, and we don't understand where it is found. we've been taught that contentment comes from people that we know. If I could just hang out with the right people, then I would be content. Everything would be okay. But people never live up to our expectations. We've been taught to understand that contentment comes from the positions we hold. If I could get to just the right job, that would allow me to have a good income, drive a nice car, live in a nice house, and I would be content. But what happens if we don't get that job? Or what happens if we have that job and we lose it? I read an interesting story this week in one of the news articles about John McCain, because he was diagnosed with the brain tumor. But way back when Morris Udall was the former senator from Utah, he was in the hospital and he was dying. I don't remember if it was a tumor, but Morris Udall was dying and he was in the hospital. And Morris Udall, most of you probably recognize that name. He was a very powerful senator on some powerful committees, and everybody wanted to be friends with Morris Udall. But by the time he was out of the Senate, lying sick in a hospital bed, hardly anybody came to visit him. He wasn't Morris Udall, the senator, anymore. He couldn't do anything for anybody, so what's the point of visiting him? Except John McCain would come and visit Morris Udall. Because when John McCain first became a senator, there was a guy named Morris Udall that showed him the ropes and helped him and helped him along and taught him. So it doesn't come in positions. It doesn't come in people. And Paul says contentment doesn't even come from a lot of stuff or even from having a little stuff. I don't say this out of need in verse 11. So he doesn't have any need, for I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I find myself. See, contentment is part of our mind, meaning we know who we are and where we stand with Jesus Christ. So there is a learning process, but where do we begin in that learning process? Well, the first thing is we need to act better than we feel. Because if you go by your feelings, you're never going to be content. So you need to act better than you feel. Wouldn't it be great to always feel like doing the things that we need to do? Sometimes we have to do something because it's the right thing to do or because it needs doing, not because we feel like it. And so to be truly content, we're going to have to learn in our minds to let our minds, knowledge, not feelings, decide whether we are content or not. See, Paul said it was a secret to be learned and not to let our feelings guide our behavior, because if we let our feelings guide our behavior, 99.9% of the time, we will be wrong. G. Campbell Morgan said, "It is easier to act your way into a better way of feeling than it is to feel your way into a better way of living." It is easier to act your way into a better way of feeling than to feel your way into a better way of acting. See, someone has said if you go through the motion, you will feel the emotion. How many of you have ever gone to a party or a function or something that you didn't want to go to for whatever reason, but once you go, even though you didn't want to be there, things change for the better? That's what Paul is saying to us. One saying that Alcoholics Anonymous uses with success is, fake it until you can make it. Is this being a hypocrite? No, because there is a difference between hypocrisy and acting responsibility. When a crying baby wakes up a mother in the middle of the night, does she say, "I'd be a hypocrite to get up and do something that I don't feel like doing"? Instead, she gets up, she talks to the child, she changes the diaper, rocks him back to sleep. See, sometimes we step up and do the right thing because it is the right thing to do. Then, of course, the mother goes back to bed and hits her husband who slept through the whole thing. But that's a different story. See, my point is, sometimes we step up and do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Knowledge. Second, refuse to compare yourself to others. See, have you ever noticed when let me get my thought back here. Have you ever noticed that when we're comparing, we are comparing what we have against someone who always has something more or better? We never compare ourselves to someone who has less. We don't say, "Oh, I got a nice car, and that guy over there's just got a bicycle." And we say, "No, I got a 10-year-old car, and this person over here, they got a really nice car." And so we sort of feel sorry for ourselves, and we think that we are deprived. We always pick out a family or a person or that has more. We say that the Smiths have 2 cars, and both of them are Mercedes, and their house is a $500,000 house. But we fail to consider how many in the world have less than we do. See, one of the surest ways to make yourself feel miserable and discontent is to start comparing yourself with others, because you can always find someone who has more money than you, has a bigger house in a nice subdivision, gets better grades or more promotions, is better looking, taller, thinner. There's always people out there with more hair than I. See, you need to stop the comparison game. Contentment is not found in possessions or circumstances. Verse 12. I know how to make do with little, and I know how to make do with a lot. In any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being content, whether well-fed or hungry, whether in abundance or in need. See, the secret of contentment is found here in beginning in verse 12. Paul says, I have learned the secret of being content in any and all circumstances. Paul's saying, regardless of our circumstances, whether we have money or not, whether we have a lot of things or we don't have much, we can still have contentment because the secret is in something other than what we have or don't have. And if not things, then what? If it's not things, what is it? Well, that's the third step. Contentment comes from learning to appreciate what we have in Jesus Christ. Verse 13. I am able to do all things through him who strengthens me. That verse is actually just one word in the Greek, and Paul writes it twice. That means this is something that Paul wanted the readers to really notice. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And he's saying, I can do all things. I really can. And so can we. See, true contentment comes from living life, understanding that everything fades in comparison to knowing Jesus Christ. See, discontent often comes from feeling deprived. But when we understand what we deserve and compare it to what we've received in Jesus Christ, we can truly be content. And just to be clear, we don't deserve anything. The Bible makes that clear. But because God loves us through Jesus, he gives us everything. See, Paul looked to the Lord in every circumstance to help him to be content. He looked to the Lord to strengthen him against the temptation to be self-sufficient and complacent when times were good. And he looked to the Lord for strength when times were bad. And he faced the temptation to feel sorry for himself. See, through any and every circumstance, he found the Lord's strength to be sufficient. So this brings us to two things that are closely related. And it all begins with acceptance. The fourth thing is accept people the way they are and not as you would like them to be. We'll say that again. Accept people the way they are and not as you would like for them to be. You know, I've discovered you can't fix people. You either accept them as they are or you're going to be miserable. The same thing's true of churches. You know, you may have a fantasy of what a church should be or do, but reality never measures up. It can't, because you are measuring it against a fantasy or something that's not real. See, someone has said churches are like people. They do not change in order that they might be accepted. They must be accepted. people must be accepted in order that they might change. Accept people as they are. And if you accept them as they are, then the possibility of change exists. The fifth thing is accept things as they are and not as you would like them to be. See, when we refuse to accept things as they are, we cut ourselves off from the present. And when we cut ourselves off from the present, then we have any chance. We miss any chance for contentment. Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 says this, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble or honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." See, verse 8 tells us it is our minds that trip us up. The mind causes discontent because we focus on the wrong things. Because we think on the wrong things. How many of you have laid awake at night because of your thoughts? Thinking on wrong things, especially thinking on things that never happened. And so Paul gives us the solution right here in verse 8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble or honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. The secret of contentment is this. Contentment comes from within. It is both learned and experienced. Contentment is not found in possessions or circumstances. So no matter what the situation is, we can be content. Contentment is found in learning to appreciate what we have in Jesus Christ, who strengthens each of us. Contentment comes from thinking on right things. Jesus and his example first. But Paul tells us the secret that everything comes from God. Everything. Everything that we own, everything that we possess, everything that we are comes from God. And he is the one who gives us strength if we depend on him. You know, there's lots of things that we have to be content about. We have Christian friends, we have God and Jesus. And Paul reminds us to give thanks for everything. Everything. That means both the good and the bad. I know it's easier to give thanks for the good, but he says give thanks for the bad too. That's part of the secret of being content, and we find it throughout the New Testament. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 16 through 18, Paul writes this, "Rejoice always." Contentment means we will rejoice always. Pray constantly. Contentment means we will pray constantly. And then give thanks in everything. Why? For contentment, but Paul continues, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. Give thanks in everything, because this is what Christ Jesus wants you to do. So rejoice always, pray constantly, and give thanks for everything, and you will be content in any and all circumstances. Amen. Our closing hymn is number 2. Would you please stand? Number 2.